Welcome again to the July 10th City Council work session. And the first item is committee reports and items of interest. So do I have anyone in the queue? We have a list. I can start with Betty.
Not Mike. Okay, first the same thing I would think everyone else would be interested in, the fireworks. I've had multiple telephone calls, have conversations, and emails saying, can't you do something about this torture? And that was even before the after midnight thing. But it was really worse than ever this year, I think. And people are concerned about themselves and their animals. One family said they drove around all evening. You probably all got that email to avoid it, and then came home and there was more. So I think it's time. I've said this almost every year. Right after the 4th of July is the time to consider a ban, because before the people, the charitable groups order their fireworks for next year. There's no reason that people, in order to give something to someone else, should torture the whole community. I really hope we will do something about it. Another thing, I plan to send out my request for a C2 work session again, see if it succeeds. It didn't succeed last time. And Wednesday's agenda, which I looked at already, I'm very disappointed. I thought we were going to get some possible action items. That's when we had this brief, superficial work session on nuisance codes before, there was nothing there except what we already knew, and I see the same thing again. Just some summaries of what some other communities have, but no possibilities of things that we might do. And that's what I had requested. I don't know about Alan. And Alan and I separately requested work sessions on nuisance, and both of them were approved, but we still haven't had a satisfactory session. I don't see it coming up on Wednesday either. Thank you.
Okay, Claire?
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate Councillor Taylor mentioning the fireworks and the disturbing of the peace that occurred on 4th of July. And I noted this email from a gentleman who was one of a number who complained about the the PK Park fireworks going off after midnight. And in his email, he noted that he and his family leave their neighborhood on the evening of 4th of July because of the illegal fireworks activity. And I've been doing that for years myself. And before I joined council, I used to think it was just my neighborhood. And now I recognize that this is an experience people have all over the community. And the fact that people are choosing to have to leave their homes for an evening or a couple of days sometimes in order for others to celebrate our Independence Day, I think is regretful. And I'll note that our very first Independence Day did not involve setting off ordinance of any kind. And in fact was about signing a piece of paper and celebrating in that manner. But who knows, maybe they had fireworks back there in Pennsylvania. So I support Councillor Taylor's. I was the other councillor on this city council who supported a complete ban of fireworks, and we were in the minority on that. So perhaps we might try again for another work session and see if anyone can be swayed to change their position on this. My second item of interest is a process item. I'm sure my fellow councillors saw my slightly cranky email at the end of last week asking other councillors to refrain from initiating discussions on policy items via email. We are supposed to have our discussions, deliberations in public. It's fine to coordinate a meeting or an agenda item via email, but I don't think we should be stating positions and reacting to each other's positions in that format. We'll get ourselves in trouble, and as I pointed out in my email, it's not fair to those of us who may not have time to get on email and participate in that form of discussion. So I just wanted to thank my councilors for taking that into consideration, particularly since we have a brand new city councilor and another relatively new city councilor. I think we need to be very mindful of following our protocol and legal process. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention on Friday last week, there was a memorial service for Mike Kelly, who was the city manager of Springfield for many, many years, and didn't want to let that go by without acknowledging it. He was a great service to Springfield. Springfield was his entire career. Basically, he started out in the engineering department, worked his way up to city manager, and there was a lot of good people there. It was a great service. On the issue of fireworks, I think the biggest interest for me is whether or not we are enforcing the existing law. I mean, we could ban all fireworks. We could do it tomorrow. But what would be the outcome of that? If I'm already firing off illegal fireworks, then I don't care what you do about making more fireworks illegal. I'm just going to continue to do what I'm already doing. I'm already firing off illegal fireworks. You're going to do nothing for me. It's against the law to run a red light. And yet how many people run red lights? It's against the law to talk on your cell phone in your car. And how many people talk on your cell phone in your car? So it's not whether or not we pass another law or ordinance. It's whether or not we are prepared to back it up and enforce it. And so my questions, the question I have is, are we enforcing the ban against illegal fireworks? I agree, it's a terrible, terrible thing, and it's already illegal, and we are not doing, and I'm assuming this, I would love to hear back from the chief, we're not doing as much as we could do to enforce it. I mean, how many citations did we issue? How many dollars in fines did we fine somebody? If I shoot off illegal fireworks and someone comes to my home and issues a citation for $250 or $500, I'll think twice about breaking the law. But if I shoot off fireworks and nothing happens, you can pass all the bans you want to, and it won't do any good. So for me, the issue is we need to enforce the fireworks bans we already have. And the fireworks that are the most disturbing to people are already illegal. They've already been banned. We just need to enforce that rule. And then I think you'll begin to see some action. But right now, I'm not hearing a lot about large citations, large convictions, people being issued fines for it. I mean, I would love to know what that is, what is happening. We have a tip line, people call, you know, but what happens? It's like cell phones and red lights. If nothing's going to happen, I'm just going to keep doing it. You can pass all the laws you want to, but I'm just going to keep doing it. And that's the concern I have, is this will make us feel better, but it won't have the desired outcome we're looking for.
Hey, Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. Chris just said a whole bunch of what I would have said exactly just like it, so I won't repeat all of that, other than to say I actually like the fireworks very much. I enjoy the illegal ones, but I don't light any of those off myself, but I enjoy them quite a bit. But I recognize that there are a number of people who don't, and I recognize that it's very disturbing for some. I'm not interested in making new ordinance around people who are offended, but I am around people who are genuinely frightened and are genuinely harmed. Now, I would not support a ban of what is currently legal fireworks. But Chris is right. We already have a ban on the things that explode and fly around and cause fire damage. I have for the last 2 years in a row, certainly, and no, I was thinking it might be 3, but 2 years in a row, said this, in this age, it's easy for us to help enforcement. Technology is there to do it. We need an app that essentially deputizes the public, that people can take a picture. It's already coded with time and geolocation, and it can be used as evidence, and upload it, and then the police have an opportunity to assist with their enforcement process. The interesting thing is that since the last time I mentioned that last year, that app's already been invented. At the Hack for a Cause that they last had down here, they invented the exact same thing for the work that the guides do downtown about nuisances in the downtown core. They invented the app, and the downtown guides use it right now. So I really don't know why we can't modify that exact same thing in order to help put it out to the public for free, that you can download that and the information will go directly to the police department with a picture of whoever's lighting off something that they shouldn't be. And secondarily, I would support a work session right before the 4th of July next year to increase at a pretty dramatic increase in the fines for illegal fireworks. I mean, if we really are going to step up our capacity for enforcement and the penalty for doing so, I'd be in favor of that. But Chris is right. Until we're going to effectively do something to enforce the laws we have, banning fireworks won't do a darn thing. So,
Alan.
Yes, excuse my voice. Allergies are getting the better of my voice box. I wanted to comment on Mike Kelly's memorial service as well. He was a city manager for 16 years at City of Springfield. My wife worked with him for all those years, and I had a lot of respect for Mike. He did some amazing things at Springfield, accomplished a lot. 16 years as a city manager is a feat unto itself. The Gateway area, the Pioneer Parkway, the Booth Kelly work, just a lot of things that Mike really did with the city. The Justice Center is a good example. He just had a long laundry list of things that are accomplished during his tenure that really deserve note. And he will be sorely missed. On the fireworks, I've been on the fence on both. In areas where they ban fireworks, it's in its totality, like in the most of the Bay Area, for instance, bans fireworks, and there aren't any fireworks. And here we have a slightly different thing. We have the county in Springfield, and if we all don't do it, I wonder how that would work and how we would enforce it. And comes down to really about enforcement and whether if we banned it, could that even work? I'm interested in what Mike's talking about in terms of the app that might be able to direct police to the right place, but I think it's not I think it's more complicated than that. And we talked about fines last time, but I think the judge has the ultimate say on what the fines can be and whether or not they're disproportional. I think it's worth talking about some more, but I'm not sure that we have a solution to it given where we are and where people are. On the noise complaints that we had, in particular the concert at Cuthbert and then PK Park, I think it's we're going about reviewing our rules and how we do things at Cuthbert and making sure that doesn't happen again. I think that's a great place to go, and also making sure that our people know the noise ordinance. It's after 10 p.m. And maybe on the 4th of July it's after 11 p.m. But those things need to be taken into consideration for the whole community. I know the fireworks at PK Park woke me up at 11 or at 1 o'clock in the morning, and so I'm sure it woke up a heck of a lot of people. They should have used better judgment than that. I think they should have either called the game or postponed it or done something so that it didn't disrupt the entire community. I thought that was very poor decision making on their part, and hopefully that won't happen again either, because we're talking to them again about that. And then we are finding them in violation of the noise code. So. I have a couple of reports back on the MPC and the Sustainability Commission that I'd like to do as well.
Okay, Emily?
Thank you. I don't want this to turn into a work session on fireworks, but since it seems to be, I would seriously encourage us to look at silent fireworks. I know other places do them. I love the light and the color. I don't like the noise. My dog has destroyed parts of my house, my car. I totally understand. It's cruel to people who have PTSDs to have fireworks, but I know that they can make them without noise, and I think that would be worth looking into. Thank you.
Okay, so, Greg, go for it.
I thought you missed me, Mayor. So a couple of notes. I have the same allergy problems. I'm just allergic to Zelenka.
So I must be allergic.
But yeah, a couple of quick notes. League of Oregon Cities, as you may know, one of the four major items that the league was pushing this legislative session has passed, and that's the transportation package. So that's a good thing. And as it may note that LTD is getting some money for, to expand bus rapid transit and other pieces that go along with that. And of course, we're going to get some more money, hopefully, to fix our roads. We won't keep up with that, but we will, fix some of the roads that need to be fixed. In addition, and I did testify about a month ago for LOC's position on the transportation package. So I was up in Salem for that. It was up in Salem again. No, actually, it was in, where were we at? Yeah, we were in Salem last Friday for the LOC executive board meeting, and I don't know how this happened, but I got myself elected treasurer for League of Oregon Cities. So,
Sorry.
but those things happen occasionally, and we had a vacancy, and so Denny Doyle is still the president, and vice president now is Tim Slater from North Bend, who moved up. Councilor Slater did. So I think that's it, and I won't comment on fireworks except to say that I think the comments around here were right. If we don't have a total community-wide ban on fireworks, it's not going to work. And there's a lot of people who bring a lot of fireworks out from outside the state, particularly Washington is where most of the illegal fireworks come from. So there's some habits that have been ingrained in people that are going to be difficult to be broken.
I just need to say one more thing.
Okay, hang on. We're going to do a second round. I'm going to let the manager address some points. And
Just to make at least anybody thinks we actually aren't enforcing fireworks. We are enforcing fireworks. And you might remember several of you were on council, could have been 2 years ago. Time goes fast now. But we had a couple of conversations around fireworks. One was whether to ban them or not. And then we also, at the time, brought forward sort of plans for increased education and enforcement. And so those plans still go into effect. So we are continuing to do the education and enforcement. I would agree with you that unless there's somebody on every corner, it is difficult to enforce, but we are continuing to do the program that we talked about a couple years ago. Doesn't mean we can't do more, and it might be worth having another conversation around fireworks. I would agree with Betty, it should be sooner than 2 weeks before everybody wants to buy their fireworks. And so if that's the will of the council, we would be happy to come back in the fall and have another conversation around fireworks.
Great, thank you. So yes, that's an invitation for a work session, Paul, and I'll leave it in your hands. I have Alan with a comment. I just want to comment that this is also a time for committee reports. So if you have something that you want to report about a committee you've been attending, this will give it just a couple more minutes. So Alan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I have two reports, one on MPC and one on the Sustainability Commission. On the MPC, there is currently a vacancy on the Oregon Transportation Commission, which is the governing body of the Oregon Department of Transportation. And several of us, Mayor and myself and others, put in letters of support for Kitty Piercy getting on the OTC. So keep your fingers crossed. Hope that would happen before the end of the session, but it didn't. The transportation bill did pass. A scaled down version of it has about $5.3 billion worth of infrastructure spending in it, mostly from a gas tax that comes increments over a 6-year period, goes up 4 cents a gallon, then 2 cents a gallon, then 2 cents a gallon, and then 2 cents a gallon. So 10 cents over a 6-year period. The other part of it comes from title and registration fees. There's an oddity that I thought was pretty outrageous in the title and registration fees. Years and years and years of saying, incentivizing people to get higher MPG cars, the title and registration fees actually, the more they tried to get more equity in terms of funding for roads, the higher your MPG, the more you pay on these title and registration fees, which I think is ridiculous. So because you use the roads less per gallon of gas used for the gas tax. So and then the other thing they did was they put in a flat tax for bicycles, trying to get bicycles for using the roads as if they were the major deteriorators of the road, but that's a flat fee of $15. And then the other thing that was in that bill, there's a voluntary dollars per mile driven voluntary program called Origo, so you can opt to be in that instead of paying a gas tax, which is a new innovation. There's also rebates for electric vehicles, and then there's also a tax on the sale of new vehicles, which is a big part of the new revenue source as well, and that will go in part to fund electric vehicle rebates. And then there was some minor changes to the clean fuels program, low carbon fuels program, mostly that it had a cap on the amount that could be charged in any given time. And then as far as monies go, what we're expecting to see in Lane County is $7.7 million in the 17 to 19 biennium, and then the next biennium $14.8 million, then 18 million, then 22 million, then 23 million. So over that period of time, about $86 million coming to Lane County for road improvements and upgrades in our community. So that's pretty good. For some of the quirks in the transportation bill, I thought was pretty good. The other big thing that we were working on was the CMAQ, which is the congestion mitigation and air quality. If I recall, a couple of times ago, I mentioned that we got left out of that and deemed ineligible. It turns out we were always eligible, and so they went back and tried to retrofit our funding that we didn't get, and so they gave us $7.1 million for our area, and there's 17 projects that have been put forward for that total amount of money. 4 of them from Eugene. And just real quickly, okay, I'll need another round.
Pass that down.
There we go.
Thanks.
So you'll get another round. Betty, you have something you want to add?
Yes, I want to respond to something. I want to say, for one thing, if everything law that's not being obeyed, let's just make it legal. And then the other thing is, I want to respond to what was said about deliberating on email. All I did was respond to the manager's expression of his intention to get rid of the free parking downtown. And I think it was good to respond to that as quickly as possible to let people know how people feel about that. And that's what I did. Thank you.
All right, anybody else need another round, or I'll send it back to Alan to finish up?
Oh, El Rapa, I should say something about that. We meet this coming Thursday at noon at 10th and Main, and it's open to the public. There's public comment at the beginning. Nothing has happened recently, and we still haven't discussed auto emissions, but I'm still trying. Thank you.
Great. All right, Alan, why don't you wrap it up?
Yeah, we got the CMAQ funding, $7.1 million, 17 projects funded. 4 of them were Eugene projects. High Street Protected Bikeway for $1.5 million. The Eugene Enhanced Walking Network, which is mostly sidewalks and connecting things, $1.1 million. Franklin Boulevard the area, the NEPA documents for the National Environmental Protection Act documentation, $235,000, and Smart Trips for Active Downtown, about $200,000. So $3 million, or about 43% of the total, is going to projects in Eugene from that money. The other part of it was the MPC is also the Metro Cable TV Commission. And we held in abeyance the funds coming from the cable TV into that fund until we built up enough money to fully fund the new City Hall Metro Cable TV equipment that we'll need. So they finally got to that point where it was fully funded, and then we started allocating a little bit of money to the to other things. But all that money for the new City Hall is in place. On the Sustainability Commission, again, we have 4 focus areas: land use and transportation, climate change mitigation and resiliency, sustainable economic development, and Envision Eugene. And working on all of those areas. On land use and transportation, commented on the TSP, and several of the commission members were here giving testimony. Also on land use, we have a tiny house committee that's working to move that forward. On climate change, one of the things that's brought forward is this thing called a score, which is a kind of like an MPG rating for your house on how much energy it uses. Working with that with the University of Oregon's got a pilot that they're working through. And then, of course, we got a lot of the same that the council did in terms of the U.S. Bank divestment. And that's been coming up quite a lot at the Sustainability Commission as well. And so we had a presentation by the Sustainable Procurement Office and talking about our sustainable procurement policies. I don't know if there's a lot we can do more than we're already doing, but I guess we'll continue to look at that.
Great. Emily, go for it.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that we got our copies of the Human Rights Commission's report on focus groups. It's quite lengthy. It took a long time, a lot of work. It has a lot of information, so I encourage not only us to read it, but the public. There's copies of it online. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. That was great, informative, and I think we are now ready for the first order of business.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and I'll just invite Michael and his team to lead us through the conversations.
Evening, Mayor and City Councilors. We're here tonight to talk to you about the results of the RFP process that we went through for the disposition of 2 city-owned properties, one at 8th and Mill and one at Broadway and Hilyard. And we're going to start off with Amanda D'Souza has a PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll just open it up for discussion and questions.
So today we will be talking about the disposition of 2 city-owned properties that are located between downtown and the riverfront. And I'd just like to acknowledge that we have some representatives from a couple of the proposers here today with us. So thank you to them for coming. I'll first briefly do an overview of the request for proposal process, and then we will have 2 separate work sessions for each of the properties. So we'll have a work session, discussion, work session, and then the second discussion. So council approved the use of a request for proposal process for the disposition of 2 city-owned properties in February of this year. The properties are located at 8th and Mill and Broadway and Hilyard. We issued 2 RFPs in March, and they remained open for 45 days, and we used the same process for both properties. At the February meeting, council approved several objectives for this RFP process that we would use to evaluate proposals. Given that both sites are located on key corners and corridors leading to the future riverfront redevelopment and serving as the entrance to downtown, our primary focus in this process was to assess each applicant's vision for the site. The objectives outlined that the vision should factor in the site's prominence, integrate with adjacent properties for a high-quality urban development, contribute to an active downtown and inviting pedestrian environment, and complement recent investments. We also looked at each applicant's experience with high-quality urban development, the timeliness and feasibility of the proposal, and whether their vision aligned with the city policies and goals. A staff team reviewed the proposals and based their recommendations on these objectives. We ended up receiving 1 proposal for the 8th and Mill site and 2 proposals for the Broadway and Hilyard site. So first, I'll start with a review of the proposal that we received for the 8th and Mill site. Because there was only 1 proposal, council can take action today to approve the deal points for disposition of the site to the applicant. The 8th and Mill property, shown here in blue, is located at the southeast corner of 8th and Mill intersection, across from the federal courthouse and Whole Foods. The site is about 1/4 of an acre and is currently a city-operated parking lot with 22 permitted spaces for neighboring properties. The site also has a small building of low utility. The site was one of 2 properties purchased from Autocraft during the courthouse property acquisition in 2002, and the other parcel was sold for the federal courthouse development. We received 1 joint proposal for this site from DeChase Mixis and G Group LLC. G Group currently owns the properties adjacent to this site, shown here in red, and they would integrate the city's property into a larger unified mixed-use development. And so their proposal is included in your packet as attachment B. Both G Group and DeChase Mixis have experience in downtown Eugene development. G Group's development projects include the Broadway and Pearl Historic District, renovation of the Eugene Hotel, and the new Whole Foods Market. DeChase Mixis has been involved with several Eugene projects, including the Northwest Community Credit Union, First on Broadway, Crescent Village, and they're currently spearheading redevelopment of the vacant building at 1203 Willamette into a new mixed-use space. DeChase Mixis and G Group have assembled a team made up of GGLO, which is an architectural design firm based out of Seattle, and Roll Brokaw, which is a local architectural design firm. Their proposal envisions a unified, urban, vibrant gateway project that is consistent with the city's downtown planning efforts. They are currently evaluating market conditions for possible uses, including retail, restaurant, hospitality, and housing. The final configuration will be finalized through market analysis and strategic partnerships. And they've offered to pay appraised fair market value for this site and have not requested any public assistance. Staff evaluated the proposal and concluded that G Group and DeChase Mixis' proposal met the RFP's objectives. They demonstrated their understanding of the site as a gateway and connection between downtown and the future riverfront redevelopment. In addition, their projects in Eugene demonstrate their ability to deliver high-quality, pedestrian-friendly urban developments. So council today is asked to consider sale of the property based on the deal points that are outlined in attachment D. These include a purchase price that will be determined by an appraised fair market value, paid in cash at closing, a 60-day due diligence period for G Group to review property information and conduct environmental testing, and closing would take place 90 days after this due diligence period. It shows their intent to pursue a mixed-use, larger development with a commitment to redevelop this property so that it does not remain a surface parking lot in its final form, and also dedicating a 5-foot easement and right-of-way along 8th Avenue for pedestrian-friendly improvements, which would support the Willamette to Willamette initiative. So because we only received 1 proposal for this site, council is asked today to take action on disposition of the 8th and Mill property to the applicant. Staff's recommendation is to direct the city manager to sell the property to G Group LLC based on the terms outlined in attachment D. So with that, I can take any questions.
Okay, any questions? Betty first.
How much time would they be given to develop it?
They're right now. We have the deal points have no restriction. They're right now in the kind of determining the market conditions, and their hope is to have it done by 2021. But it will depend on how their assessment goes and their evaluation.
And could we put a deadline, or isn't that customary to say if you don't develop by a certain date that the deal is off?
It's possible that if that's what council would like, I think that could be a.
I think what we want to do is really think through that, because at any given market, conditions do dictate in timing, and so I'd want to think about whether or not we would really want council to set a firm date. What we would do through negotiations is try to get a sense of that and put something into an agreement that moves us towards something, but recognizing that conditions do change, and so we'd want to make sure we've put in enough flexibility in there.
We've talked to the applicants, and they understand our desire. We'd love to have something there by 2021, but They've also shared with us kind of the realities of development, and they also, they want to do a project that really works too, and not necessarily be held to that timeline. But they certainly understand our desire to move forward, and they're definitely committed to redeveloping that block there.
So would they be able to dig it up and just leave it sitting for a year or two?
Well,
That sort of thing has happened in the past, that someone makes it look really unsightly and then it just sits there.
Well, they own most of the properties on that block right now, and so I don't know that we have any concerns that they're going to allow things to go into disrepair, or that we would have concerns that they would create some kind of nuisance there. And we've asked that they maintain, part of the deal points is a commitment to maintain that as a surface parking lot as it is now until it's time to redevelop. So essentially it's going to look like it looks now until they redevelop it.
Thank you.
And I'll also note they have already started to take steps to kind of look at the marking conditions, especially since they already have the rest of the properties that have been combined. And so they've already started that process.
Alan?
Yeah, I had a similar concern about timeline. I understand that the market is going to dictate this a bit, but I'm wondering why we did an RFP that had all this stuff in it about our vision, and they put in all this vision and stuff, and then there's nothing in the deal points that holds anybody to anything other than this is just a sale, and they have to maintain it as in its current ugly state, which is an abandoned building in a parking lot. So this seemed like much ado about nothing. We're just more or less selling the property to them, and with no timelines, no requirements that you do anything, and except for not make it more ugly than it is.
Well, we also did an RFP process so we'd have some control and say in actually who we were selling to. And the fact that they're so invested in that area already and have shown they've done really quality projects there, it seems like that's a good indication of what they're going to want to happen there, and that they own, the other big advantage here is that they own the property around that site. So they're just in a much better position to really leverage that and do something significant as opposed to somebody else who might come along and just do something on that one. I mean, it's a little more than a quarter-acre parcel. So.
Yeah, I understand that they own almost all of that block, so I hope they will do a great development there. It's been primed for that for quite a long time, so I encourage them to move along and get that as soon as they can. And I understand why we did an RFP so that we could have anybody that wanted to respond to this, and nobody else responded. So. But the part that I didn't understand was why did we put all that other stuff in there if we weren't going to hold them to it and ask them for all this other kind of stuff? It's just, it seemed like a little bit of overkill.
Okay. Claire?
Thank you. I think they did the RFP that way because we directed them to, if I recall. So I appreciate the concern about making sure we don't sell a lot and it sits there, but we're actually not in a really strong moral position to be talking about downtown lots that have been created, leveled, emptied, looking kind of scruffy. When is someone going to build something there? I believe this developer is likely very eager to put this piece of property in with the properties they already have there and aren't interested in owning a parking lot. So I have a lot of confidence that they're going to look to get their project underway as soon as it's feasibly possible for them to do, and we can't really ask more than that. So I think this is a great opportunity to continue the vision that was started, I think, way back when the federal court building was put in place, and to create, some great new development along that part of our gateway into downtown. So I am eager to approve this sale.
I just have one question, which is I don't know what's the sale price? I mean, what's the ballpark here?
Well, we can give you ballpark, but until we have an appraised,
Right.
I mean, the price will be what the appraised value says it is. But Amanda, I think, we did a little bit of research we kind of know a range to expect.
Right. So looking at about the 25 to 35 per square foot, it's about 250,000 to 400,000.
Okay, so will be negotiated when it's dialed in. Okay, any other questions on this? All right, Alan, do you want to make a motion?
I move to authorize the city manager to sell the parcel identified in attachment A to G Group LLC, consistent with the terms included in attachment D.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it passes. That's great. Thank you all. And now we're on to the next property.
So next we will move a bit further east and talk about the city-owned property located at the northeast corner of Broadway and Hilyard. Again, we used the same RFP process for the Broadway and Hilyard site and received 2 proposals. Staff used the same objectives to evaluate the proposals, including assessing their vision, experience, feasibility of the project, and alignment with the city's policies and goals. Because we received 2 proposals, we are asking City Council to give us direction on moving forward with one of the proposals. If Council chooses to move forward with a proposal, we would then negotiate with the applicant and bring back deal points to Council for sale of the property at a future date. The Broadway and Hilyard site, shown here in blue, is located to the east of the 8th and Mill site. The property is immediately adjacent to the 66 Motel to the north and east, and across from Cafe Yum to the south. The site is a little more than a quarter acre and is currently vacant and undeveloped. It is a remnant of properties the city purchased in 2007 to use for the Courthouse District transportation infrastructure improvements. As you probably notice, the site has unique challenges. There is currently no vehicular access to the site, and Public Works staff has said that providing a driveway to the site would be challenging and unsafe, which limits the types of development that would be feasible in this spot. As I mentioned, we received 2 proposals. One was received from the owner of the Goodwill Boutique, located across Hilyard to the west of the property, and a second proposal from the owner of the adjacent Motel 66. So I'll briefly go through each proposal and staff's recommendation. The first proposal was submitted by J.R. Zukin Corp. and is found in attachment B. They proposed the development of an open plaza with an informative digital display and an iconic welcome sign that serves as a gateway for downtown Eugene. J.R. Zukin operates as both an outdoor advertising company, known as Meadow Advertising, and a real estate company that has acquired, developed, and operates a number of retail properties in Oregon and California, including the Goodwill Boutique across the street. For this proposal, they have also partnered with Metrocom Development, who operates a number of retail establishments in Oregon, including the Rain Northwest restaurant off West 11th. J.R. Zukin has proposed a purchase offer that includes in-kind advertising. They've also said that they are willing to monetize this either through purchase or lease of the property. Their vision is to create a memorable visual experience for travelers. They would work with local artists on specific design elements, which would include a gateway sign at the corner and a 2-sided 9-by-27-foot digital display. They also propose the creation of an open-air plaza, which would feature food cart kiosks, seating, performance space, and artistic and educational elements such as murals and artful maps. The open plaza would include fixed food cart structures, open and covered seating areas, performance space, native landscaping, artistic elements, and bike racks. J.R. Zukin anticipates that implementation would take about 18 months to complete, and redevelopment would wrap up by the end of 2018. The second proposal was submitted by Tom Connor and is found in attachment C. Mr. Connor currently owns the adjacent motel and has a long-term lease on that property. He proposes integrating the city's property with his existing motel in order to address the site's limited access. He has partnered with GMA Architects, a local firm, to propose the development of an outdoor social hub that brings bright, fun, and lively uses, which would be combined with significant redevelopment and remodel of the Motel 66. He has proposed a purchase price of $90,000. Mr. Connor has demonstrated experience in downtown Eugene development. He has led development of the Eugene Planing Mill District, recruiting REI and other local businesses. He has developed both the Fifth and Pearl Building and Station Square, which are occupied by various office and retail tenants. He is also in the process of starting redevelopment of the Best Western Green Tree, which is across from Matt Knight Arena. Mr. Connor's proposed social hub would include uses such as a food cart pod, landscaped open spaces, a communal hearth, and an anchor use such as a brew pub, similar to the model used at Beer Garden on 6th Avenue. The development of the social hub would be combined with a complete remodel of the motel, including creating an open connection to the motel by removing the corner walls and installing infrastructure and support functions such as bathrooms, storage, and delivery areas. The proposed timeline has the social hub completed by fall of 2018 and the rebranding and remodel of the motel by the fall of 2019. In terms of redevelopment of the motel, Mr. Connor has cited the Lark Hotel in Bozeman, Montana as a model he would like to draw from. The Lark is an old interstate motel that was redeveloped into a boutique hotel with an open-air design and permanent food truck stationed off the sidewalk. In addition to pursuing the city-owned property, Mr. Connor is also seeking to purchase the land under and adjacent to his motel to the east. If he can successfully acquire the adjacent properties, he proposes the development of a future large-scale mixed-use project that would add density to the corridor and maintain the pedestrian scale of the property. This image shows what this larger-scale development could possibly look like. So to give you a better idea of scale based on what's there now, here is the city-owned property in blue and the current motel in green. And the adjacent property they are trying to purchase is here in orange. If he's unable to acquire the additional orange property, he would still move forward with the smaller concept of the social hub and motel redevelopment. So staff evaluated both proposals based on the objectives here presented in the RFPs, and a summary of those evaluations can be found in attachment E. Based on their evaluation of the proposals, staff concluded that Mr. Connor's vision best meets the objectives and criteria in the RFP and also best addresses the challenges associated with redevelopment of the site, which has limited access. His proposed social hub with the combined remodel of the motel lends itself to the best opportunity to successfully activate this site as it addresses the site's limited access and it encourages active, lively, and pedestrian-friendly uses. In addition, the potential for a larger scale mixed-use redevelopment project would strengthen the connection between the U of O and the riverfront, and Mr. Connor has experience with developing catalytic projects in downtown Eugene. Staff recommends the selection of Mr. Connor's proposal. If selected, staff would work with Mr. Connor to negotiate deal points for sale of the city-owned property, and we would bring back the deal points for council consideration at a future date.
Thank you. Do I have questions? Anybody need to be in the queue on this? Betty? Alan?
Is it $90,000 rather low for this?
Based on our estimates, which was about $10 to $20 per square foot, it's about $100,000 to $200,000 of an estimate, but that doesn't also take into consideration the complexity of the site and the restricted access and the additional complications that there would be with developing the site otherwise.
The other proposal didn't need automobile access, right?
Well, they would need it for the food court, but they wouldn't get regular access, correct?
What I'd also say is if you approve us moving forward, you haven't approved a sale price. That's what their proposal is. We haven't accepted that yet, so.
Mm-hmm. The other one would be more appealing to, would have more open space and more appeal to pedestrians and bicyclists, it sounds like.
They're similar in concept in terms of the pedestrian access. Mm-hmm. They're both building off kind of a food cart concept. So I don't know that one is necessarily more accessible than the other by pedestrian. What was, I think, attractive to us for the Connor proposal was that they can, again, leverage owning adjacent property, so they just have many more options as to what they could do. They can use parking associated with the motel. They can knock out walls and integrate that development there and remodel with the site. So we just felt that the opportunities to do, there were just more opportunities to do so much more with the site than the first proposal. We also had some concerns with some of the design elements of the first proposal, and particularly a large digital display at that location as well.
Thank you.
Alan?
Yeah, a couple questions. One comment. I agree with the choice. I would love to see that place be redeveloped. It's due for that for the last 20 years. The price probably is in the ballpark since it has no access. I don't believe you would allow any access to that lot if it weren't connected to something else because of the nature of where it is on the corner. The proposal from Zukin Corp, to me, that's just a giant billboard. Whether or not it's digital or not, it's still a giant billboard. So I'm not sure that was a very good use of that particular corner, which I think is kind of pivotal for that area, which is in my ward. So is the other one, actually. I concur with your recommendation. Can you go back a slide or two that shows the map of the proposal full out development? Yeah, the orange part.
Oh, this one. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, can you just, that's currently we own it and we swapped it with
That's a little bit further down. That's a little bit further down, Franklin. That orange property is owned by the same owner that the motel is on. So the motel is currently, they have a long-term land lease. And so the same property owner owns the orange and the green. And so that's what they're trying to buy.
Oh, okay. And they just have a lease and they own the
motel, right?
Motel. Okay. Thanks.
Claire?
Thank you. Well, thanks for the presentation and for kind of discerning the two different projects for us. I think they both have merit, but I agree with staff's recommendation to pursue Mr. Connor's project. I think it definitely benefits with the tie-in for a potential for the motel redevelopment, maybe breaking through some of those walls that are pretty unattractive right now. And I prefer that vision because it doesn't include placing large visual advertising on that corner, which the first proposal, I think, relied on quite heavily. And the model for the beer garden is very successful, very popular, brings all sorts of folks, different ages and variety of folks come there. So I think it's a good model for creating something of that kind on this site, and to create a real vibrant social place here would be great, considering it is such a limited site in terms of its potential uses. So I appreciate the creativity of both proposals, but really think the Connor proposal outweighs the other in terms of its overall merit. So I would support, going forward and seeing if we can pursue a sale there.
Any other council comments? Are we ready for a motion?
I move to select Tom Connor and direct the city manager to work with Mr. Connor to negotiate deal points for the sale of the city-owned property at Broadway and Hilyard and bring deal points to the council for action.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 in favor, and it passes. I want to thank you. Both are, I think, very exciting and wonderful developments for our city, and I congratulate you on moving forward. Thanks so much. Now, I'm going to suggest that we do the consent calendar because we're early, and that will just make things a little smoother. So, do I have a motion?
The tentative working agenda. I move to approve the items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, very good. So that's taken care of, and thank you. That's the end of our work session. See you in a little bit.
This is Jennifer.